All right, guys, just want to welcome back to the Gridiron Gurus podcast. Today, I'll be doing my five fantasy football sleepers for the 2026 season. Getting started with number five, Dolphins receiver Jalen Tolbert. Now, this is a guy whose production took a bit of a back seat last year once the Cowboys added George Pickens. He, Lamb, Jake Ferguson really combined for a giant chunk of the targets. And then Ryan Fanoy really took over as that wide receiver three as well. But back in 2024, he had 610 yards and seven touchdowns. He's now with the Dolphins in a room that is incredibly young and vastly weak. He's the top veteran in this room, and if he struggles, he could easily find himself at the back of the depth chart. But he's going to start the year at the top of it for Malik Willis, and I think he'll remain there all season long. Now, this is a group that's, again, going to be trying to get some of these younger guys involved. Malik Washington, I think, could also be a fantasy sleeper. Caleb Douglas, as a rookie, is going to get a long leash. Tutu Otwell, Jalen Rager's probably not going to do a whole lot this year. You got Taj Washington, Terrace Marshall, and another freshman guy in Kevin Coleman. So I think Tolbert here is primed to really be the top catalyst for this pass game. Is they're not going to go out there and just look to lose football games. They want to see what they have in Malik Willis. They're going to give him the best guys. And if this is a guy who's going to be reliable for this offense, then he's going to play throughout the season. Tolbert isn't really getting drafted at all in most leagues, and if he is, it's really in the final two rounds or so. He's outside the top 250 in most rankings. The upside's clear, and I think it's worth the risk, so I think Tolbert makes a lot of sense here as our first guy. Looking at number four, Mike Washington. I made this list before the preseason games even started, but he ripped off a big 53-yard run. The internet's kind of familiar with who he is at this point, right? That shows the kind of impact he can have for Vegas. When you look at the running back room, though, he's the clear running back two to Gianti, and that's why I thought he would make a lot of sense. 220-pounder, runs a 4.3, can be used in a variety of different ways. I think Washington will have good usage throughout the year. I'm not willing to believe the Raiders are just going to run Gianti into the ground, as I don't figure to be competitive for a couple of seasons. Gianti's going to be big for this franchise down the line, right? So we're not going to utilize him probably as much as you would if they were a winning team. And I think that Washington, he's going to have respectable production, especially later on in the season, especially in some of these games that might be a little bit more one-sided and they're playing from behind. I think you're going to see Washington see a ton of snaps this year. So I think this is a guy you can definitely get in the later rounds as well. And I've been committing to him a good bit in some of my drafts. So I think Washington from Las Vegas is a good fantasy football sleeper. Like at number three, Antonio Williams for the Commanders. His value certainly is going to go down a bit with them adding Stephon Diggs, but this guy was a chain mover at Clemson out of the slot. Should really anchor that role instantly. This is a pretty poor receiver room in terms of depth. His route running and sharp cuts and reliability makes him a good fit for this offense. I think he's going to be an 80 target type guy this fall. And again, rookies at this position especially can be hit or miss. But based on everything I've seen from him over the last couple of years in college, when he's healthy, he's a guy that's going to be able to come into the NFL, instantly deliver a 500-yard season. Again, there's not a whole lot in this receiving room to be excited about. Adding Diggs is great. Terry McLaurin's still out there. And then Williams, he's going to take a lot of pressure off of those guys. And I think he'll be, again, a chain mover for Washington and Daniels this upcoming season. So I think he makes a lot of sense. Another one of those guys that you can get in the later rounds. I know he tends to get drafted in pretty much every draft I've been in so far. So he's definitely a bit of a hot commodity, but one that really hasn't burst onto the scene just yet. Well, at number two, tight end, Jawan Johnson. If you're looking for a sleeper at this position, I don't see why Johnson's not getting more love. He's ranked on average about 150th in PPR leagues, and he's coming off another good season, 889 yards and three touchdowns, but more importantly, far and away hit career highs, not just in yards, but in receptions and targets. 77 grabs on 102 opportunities. He was a frequent target last year for young quarterback Tyler Shook. And even with the added Jordan Tyson, he's going to remain in perennial position to get a ton of usage. This is another receiving room that also doesn't have a whole lot of talent. There's not a lot of wealth to be spread around. It's going to be him, Olave, and Tyson, even though he might miss the first part of the year, which further cements this is a great opportunity. Tight ends are kind of hard to come by, right? They're very hit or miss on a weekly basis outside of the top guys like Bowers and McBride. But Johnson was someone I ran frequently last year, and he delivered for the most part. He's going to get you a comfortable 7 to 12 points on a weekly basis, in my opinion. Looking at number one, Chris Rodriguez. newly acquired Jaguars running back. I think this is a guy that's highly slept on. He's going to reunite with head coach Liam Cohen, who was his offensive coordinator back in 2021 for the Kentucky Wildcats. He had nearly 1,400 yards that season in this zone heavy run scheme. He was the only free agent the Jaguars added this offseason as well. Bracial Tootin, he's getting all the love, and for good reason, but he doesn't figure to be the bell cow as much as Rodriguez. This is a guy who's 225 pounds, coming off a nice 500-yard, six-touchdown season in what was a loaded backfield for Washington. So he had very quiet production last year that not really many people spoke about. Very slept on player for a team that has a clear vision with a coach that views him as a really good schematic fit. And he's likely going to be the starting running back for the Jaguars, I think, too. And this is a guy who's going top 50, top 60 in most drafts. And Rodriguez is being undervalued tremendously. And he legitimately might be the starter. They're going to split touches right down the middle. Or Rodriguez is probably going to have a bulk of the carries, something that's not being talked about enough. I think Cohen loves what he has in Rodriguez. Bringing him back from his college days, I think, speaks volumes. And for them not to look to really add a whole lot outside of undrafted free agents at this position shows that he has a cemented role in this offense. And they want to dominate the league with their run game, right? That's what the Jaguars want to do. They want to continue to establish that presence on the ground. And Rodriguez is going to fill that role to a T. He's going to be my top fantasy football sleeper this year. So he could probably find you 1,000 yards this upcoming season. That's it for his episode. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.